The rumor mill is spinning and spinning and spinning. Will Matt Chapman be a Toronto Blue Jay this season?
You are Locked On Blue Jays, your daily Toronto Blue Jays podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to Locked On Blue Jays. Thank you for making Locked On Blue Jays your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. New customers join today and you'll get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Well, I feel like this has been an absolute roller coaster of an offseason with Matt Chapman, and we keep saying he's not coming back. He's not coming back. Somebody's going to sign this guy. And nobody signed him. And now the rumor mill is starting to go. And, he might end up coming back as a Toronto Blue Jay on a very, very team-friendly deal because nobody else wants him right now.
Yeah, he made a huge mistake, I think, at the start of this offseason. The Jays offered him, I think it was around a 5-year, $150 million deal, which is $30 million a year from Matt Chapman, which would have been a terrible deal for the Toronto Blue Jays. So I think it was a blessing in disguise that he turned down our qualifying offer. Now he's in an interesting spot. We're pretty much in March now, and the big three still haven't been signed. Him, along with Jordan Montgomery and Blake Snell, all three Boras guys that haven't signed yet. We saw how this impacts people all of last season. If you don't get a good spring training, you don't get those prior at-bats. Players often struggle with trying to get back into the groove of playing MLB baseball every day. So Matt Chapman, he's in a bad spot. He's going to have to sign one of those more prove-it deals again. And unfortunately for him being a guy that's getting close to 30, he kind of wanted to get one of those bigger contracts that could ink him up until he's 36, 37, 38. But for him, he's going to have to figure it out and sign a prove-it deal and it's more of a team-friendly deal. And I don't even want that to be with the Toronto Blue Jays.
Yeah, to be honest with you, I'm sort of with you at this point. Do we really want Matt Chapman, another infielder, another guy with a very streaky, hot and cold bat that you might not be exactly what we want, and we're just going to sign him because, he's Matt Chapman. He was a Toronto Blue Jay. Well, let's take a step back, I think. Think about this for a while. Nobody's but jumping at the bit to get this guy. So you have some time to really think it over. And I think, in my personal opinion as well, I think there's just not enough room on this team right now.
I think if you could go back in time and just looking at IKF's contract, a 2-year, $50 million deal, 7.5 over 2 years, then you look at a guy like Gio Urshela, who signed for $1.5 million for just the year. And the contract doesn't look great when you're comparing it to a lot of other contracts throughout the league. And look, when you're looking at it now, you have a guy like IKF that you're going to be paying $7.5 million a year. It's not a ton, but it's not nothing. So now if you sign Matt Chapman, there's just going to be a guy on this roster you're paying over $5 million to not play every day. So it doesn't really make a lot of sense from my perspective.
Yeah, and I mean, don't get me wrong, in the fielding aspects, IKF is great, but we have a lot of good fielding infielders. The problem is right now is the bats are cold. The IKF, Espinal, and Escobar combined for a 3 for 18 before today's games. And I haven't checked if they did anything better, but before these 3 games, those guys' bats are ice cold. And don't get me wrong, it is spring training. But then I look at the other side of what was the better option? Was signing Matt Chapman to bring him in and maybe doing just as poorly and batting wise going to help this team? I don't know. I don't know what the move is here for the Blue Jays, or do you just have to soak a positional player at third base being horrible with the bat in his hand? I don't know.
Well, here's the thing. You add up the contracts of IKF, you add in Santiago Espinal, you add in Eduardo Escobar, you could add in Kevin Biggio, David Schneider. You add up all these guys. They're probably still going to be making less money than Matt Chapman would have on a deal with the Toronto Blue Jays. And when you're just looking at comparing IKF's just career average to Matt Chapman's, obviously there are big different numbers in prosperities here for power. But IKF is a career hitter of 260, with Matt Chapman being a 240 hitter. And with Matt Chapman kind of losing his power a little bit last season, it's the narrative all over Twitter, all over social media in general, is that Matt Chapman is now an overpriced club. And we're seeing that from owners. It seems like owners are valuing him as that as well. It's such a hitter's league now. You see the Texas Rangers winning a World Series with a subpar bullpen and only a few decent starters. It was really their hitting that took them into the World Series. You had guys like Marcus Semien, Corey Seager, Adolis Garcia, who just carried that team with their power. And that's one thing that this third base situation might lack a little bit of, but I don't think Matt Chapman solves that problem whatsoever.
Yeah, exactly. That's what that's what I was thinking. I've been, of course, scrolling through Twitter, and it comes down to the fact that yeah, Matt Chapman doesn't help this. He's just, he's a great fielder. Nobody can take anything away from him in that regard of his game. But when you look at the hitting aspects of it last year, yes, a couple great months. He played really well, but then he was horrible, just horrible. So at what point do you have to be like, okay, well, we're not going to pay this guy $30 million to be garbage 80% of the season in the batting?
You would think that if Matt Chapman was a little bit smarter, I think right now he's just kind of letting Scott Boras deal with all of his affairs. And it seems like that's the way all of the players have done with Scott Boras as an agent. But if you're Matt Chapman, you'd think at some point you'd be like, hey, like I'm only 30 years old. Like I still am in my prime. Like I should probably be playing baseball right now, even if that is a 1 year, 2 year deal worth maybe a little bit less than he's wanted to do. But maybe there is a little bit of a fear that he knows that he's not the greatest hitter. And if he has to sign one of these prove it deals, he's not going to put up the good numbers to make income to a huge contract that he was hoping for. Like we go back to last season, we see April Matt Chapman. We're like, we might have to pay this guy $40 million a year. Like he is going insane right now. And Scott Boras probably licking his chops, being like, oh, I'm ready for this offseason. But then you see his success the entirety of the rest of the season, and it's gone nowhere. And you like one thing I found interesting was that Blake Snell got a contract offer from the Yankees for over $22 million a year, and he declined that. And look where he is now as well. We could be having a lot of different conversations about this Yankees starting roster if they would have got Blake Snell. But it's cool to see that all these owners are kind of banding together and they're not succumbing to Scott Boras and they're not overpaying these guys that want contracts they're not necessarily deserving of.
Yeah, exactly. And there comes a time when you look at contracts and you really have to evaluate the contracts that these guys want compared to contracts that have already been signed or that or terms that guys are on right now, because that's really going to dictate how much these guys make. And looking at Matt Chapman's stats last season and honestly over his whole career, we see that he's not going to be, a 280 hitter. That's just not going to be him. So at the end of the day, yeah, you're 100% nail on the head. You just I don't know. I don't know. It does worry me, though. It does worry me that Matt Chapman's going to have nothing, and the Blue Jays are going to go out, still overpay for him, but maybe not to that $30 million mark. But they're still going to overpay for him, give him a contract, and bring him back. Is that in the cards, do you think, for this team?
No, it sounds like it's kind of down to just the Giants and the Blue Jays. But just from the actions of Ross over the last few weeks, just the minor league deals of Eduardo Escobar, like you said, he hasn't been good this spring training. His at-bats have actually been horrible. I was kind of high on this offseason, but it hasn't come to yet in the first week of spring training. But Daniel Vogelbach, there's guys like that. I just don't see them handing out the money that Matt Chapman's going to be wanting. I don't see the fit here either. Like if you sign Matt Chapman, he's going to have to be your everyday third baseman. And then that just, again, IKF might slide over to second, but then that takes away playing time from Kevin Biggio, David Schneider. Maybe Ernie Clement slides in there. Aurelus Martinez has been in spring training pretty much every game so far, which is a good thing for a 21, 22-year-old. But I don't see the fit with Matt Chapman at all. Some Blue Jays fans might not like that, but we struggled watching his at-bats for the entirety of last season other than April. I don't want to do that again as a fan. And I think we'd just be better off kind of cycling guys like Justin Turner, Eduardo Escobar, IKF in at third base rather than signing Matt Chapman for probably still closer to $15 million per year.
Yeah. That's the worry, right? Is that what happens to these other guys that we've dished out money to and that we want to develop if you bring Matt Chapman back? And especially for that price, it doesn't make any sense. And I get why these rumors are coming out because obviously he hasn't been signed and there hasn't been a deal placed yet that any of us officially know about. So at the end of the day, you got to let him slide. But then then is he going to go to the Giants realistically, or is he going to wait till partway through the year to sign some deal with some team maybe that's trying to make a bigger push?
I think that would be one of the biggest mistakes of Matt Chapman's career. When you're comparing him to guys that signed before, like Cody Bellinger, and guys that haven't signed, like Blake Snell, the previous Cy Young winner, Jordan Montgomery was so instrumental to that Texas Rangers success. When you throw in Matt Chapman, you kind of compare him to these guys. he is, in my opinion, significantly worse than the free agents that have and haven't been signed under Scott Boras. I think he was probably the worst out of the big five. His hitting stats just don't back him up. So I think it was a huge mistake for him not taking the qualifying offer from the Toronto Blue Jays. And just clearly there's a little bit of greed here. They can't find a deal that's going to work. And like for Matt Chapman, you're making millions of dollars anyway. Like at some point, I feel like you have to take a little bit of a pay cut and be like, oh, I don't need this $2-3 million and just settle for a contract that is probably going to be more than you're worth anyway. So I think it's just Matt Chapman and Scott Boras being a little bit greedy in this situation.
For sure, it's greed. That it comes down to that. It comes down to thinking that you're worth more than you are, not taking a look at the other deals going on around the league. This is just an absolute botched decision making by Boras and Matt Chapman. And I would say it's more so Boras. I think Matt Chapman's pretty much going to listen to him at the end of the day. But I don't know. At some point, they're going to realize that they messed up, and it's going to come back to bite them.
Yeah, I say let him suffer. I mean, if he made his own bed with this, right? So
Yep.
the Blue Jays don't need him. We'll see if other owners succumb. I could see Matt Chapman being signed before spring training ends, but I don't want him coming back to the Blue Jays because a lot of his at-bats last year were terribly unserious. I almost thought that you probably could have been slotted in there and been a little bit more efficient than Matt Chapman near the end of the year.
Hey, you put me out there, I'll give it all. It'll be a lot of heart on that field. It'll be a lot of swing and misses, but it'll be a lot of heart.
There'll be a lot of heart, not a lot of talent. But hey, the Blue Jays could use a lot more heart on this team. So maybe that's something they're looking for.
That's right. Hey, my Twitter's right there. Brayden 5 Wasco. Somebody just shoot me something. I'll be dressed up out there.
Yeah, all the scouts that are watching this podcast, I'm sure you're high up on their prospect rankings.
Oh, for sure. This guy that talks Blue Jays, this fan of the Blue Jays that just talks about them every day, for sure. I'll sign him.
Yeah, he knows what he's talking about, so he must be good at baseball as well. But little does he know, that's why you're on a Blue Jays podcast and not on the Blue Jays.
We do want to get into some spring training storylines here, some stuff that we've seen through week one, what we want to talk about, what we'll be looking sort of going ahead through spring training. Then we want to get into the weekend games as well, take a look at, a little bit of a preview, but we'll do that right away. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Get buckets with your first bet on FanDuel, America's #1 sports book, because right now new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 if your bet wins. You can bet on all your favorite NBA players and teams with quick bets, live same-game parlays, exclusive props, and more. I know when I'm betting, I love to use the pre-made live props as I can sort of make my decisions on the go, not have to put a whole lot of thought into them. It makes me feel better when I do end up losing anyway. So just visit fanduel.com/lockedon and shoot your shot. FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NBA. So Carter, we did want to get into some spring training week one storylines. I'm going to let you go first. What's the biggest thing that you've had your eye on this starting week?
So far, I've really liked how Jose Barrios has pitched. He went out today again, looked great. And he's not a guy that's going to be like throwing up a ton of strikeout numbers, but he's going to be efficient. He's going to lug you innings. He's going to be consistently giving you 5, 6, 7 innings. And we saw that again today. He threw 29 pitches in 2 innings, 20 strikes. That's efficiency. I mean, I think he only had 1 strikeout in those 2 innings, but he's looked good. That's 2 starts in a row. Jose Barrios being back to pretty much his career form. A guy that has been very successful his entire career, other than 2023, which was a very down year. And it was tough to see him struggle for a guy that you could tell he looked just upset on the mound when he didn't bring his best stuff and wasn't helping this team win whatsoever. So it's nice to see that Jose Barrios is back, and any uncertainty that fans might have had, like, hey, can you keep this up? I think that has pretty much shut everyone up as he has looked phenomenal so far in the spring training.
Yeah, all that talk about him, is he the guy for this team? Is he not the guy? I think it's all washed to the wayside at this point. I think we all know what we're going to get every time he goes to the mound, which is a big step. He's a huge component to this rotation. And especially if Alek Manoah, talking about storylines of week one, if he's not going to perform to the way he is, we're going to need our, 2, 3, 4 guys to be absolutely huge when their number's called.
Yeah, I think the way Jose Barrios has been pitching, I know Chris Bassitt has been giving him a run for his money for that number 2 slot. But in my opinion, I think Jose Barrios has done more than enough to earn that number 2 slot. For a contract when we signed it initially, we thought was a bargain. The one that turned into, oh God, what are we going to do for the next 6 years? To a contract that's looking pretty good again, just being a little bit over $20 million a year. Where starting pitchers, well, some pitcher people are going for $700 million in the offseason now. So when you look at it from that perspective, I think we're getting a pretty good deal on Jose Barrios. And like you said, it's nice that he's gotten back to his consistency with the struggles of Alek Manoah.
Yeah, and of course, for one of my big watch outs for week one, of course, is Alek Manoah. And going into week two of, okay, now that, we heard a bunch of talk about him. Oh, well, he was working on some stuff. You can't really blame him for that. It's like, well, all these guys are working on stuff. It doesn't mean they're going out and plunking three guys, right? One guy to the head. Like, come on, what are we talking about here? That's going to be storyline for me. Can Alek Manoah bounce back? If he can't bounce back and we see just as bad of a start, God forbid, I don't even know how that gets worse. But say it gets worse or stays the same, we're going to have some real big conversations regarding Alek Manoah and what's going to happen to that fifth rotation spot. So that's a huge storyline for me going into the rest of the spring training here.
Yeah, one thing I want to see from Alek Manoah is obviously the command resolving. But the biggest thing, I want John Schneider to put him out against MLB talent. I don't care what he's doing against these random single A, double A, triple A hitters when he's going to go up against some of the best hitters in the league and get absolutely stomped on. But the biggest thing for him is his command. If he can't locate his pitches, he is going to be in a lot of trouble this season. That's 2 innings and he hit 3 batters. That's clearly just a complete loss of control on those pitches. I know one of them was a fastball, a lot of off-speed ones just going way out of the batter's box. That's something he's got to figure out, and it's been all positive from guys like Pete Walker, John Schneider, everyone in the clubhouse. I'm starting to kind of think about, hey, are these guys like seeing the same things we're seeing? Are they just kind of being on the positive side, erring with caution? It seems like they're kind of hyping up Alek Manoah for something that we haven't seen change since last season.
Yeah, and my biggest problem is when people are saying, "Oh, well, he's working on his velo. That was his concern last year, was getting his velo up." Who cares about the velo if you can't hit the strike zone? Guys are going to be ducking out of the way of pitches, and you're worried about your velo? What? Do you want to hit these guys harder? Is that what we're going for?
Yeah,
I'm about done with this conversation around Alek Manoah. Huge bounce back. Everybody's always on his side. No, we got to hold these guys somewhat accountable as the Blue Jays managing staff. Like we got to be realistic here. We have to be realistic.
Yeah, if Alek Manoah is planning on leading the league in concussions given out, then he might be on pace to do that. But as a Blue Jays pitcher, he's not looking great so far. We need to see him command pitches. Like you said, it doesn't matter if you're throwing 105 miles an hour if you can't throw strikes, or you're throwing balls that are so far off the plate that hitters are not even offering at them. You got to be at least in the realm of a strike. It's got to look like a strike at some point to get these hitters to chase at worse pitches. Like if you're getting guys to swing and miss at pitches at them, that's a really good sign. But if you're just hitting them, that's not as good, obviously. So with Alek Manoah, he's got to just be able to play off the strikes that he throws a little bit better instead of it just being a clear right down the middle strike or a ball that's not even within 40 feet of the plate.
Yeah. Do you have any other big spring training ones? I have one more, but do you have any other ones that you'll be looking forward to in the next coming games here?
Yeah, I have an interesting one. It's not as much going to impact the major league roster, but it is the kind of the catcher battle we're seeing a little bit here with Brian Servant's hot start. We talked about it a little bit last episode with his 8 RBIs being ahead of Juan Soto. But Peyton Henry's another guy that's had major league, maybe not success, but he's had major league time and experience. And for a third catcher, that's really all you need. If we're in a situation where we need to be calling these guys up anyway, it's nice that they do have a little bit of major league experience. We can kind of see what they got, how much heart they have, and how much they want to be a part of this Blue Jays team.
That's a very interesting one. You know what? Because we were just talking about this with a couple friends the other day about, it's sort of interesting because we know Jano has injuries, troubles, and it comes and goes. Of course, we always have Kirk. He seems to be just, made of steel, that guy. But of course, there's always going to be that need for that third catcher. So it's going to be interesting to see who really picks up that role.
Yeah, if you have one injury, then you can't expect Alejandro Kirk to play 90 games in a row. You're going to need somebody else to slot in there and give him some rest days when he needs them. So I think it's going to be interesting with Brian Servant and Peyton Henry here. Peyton Henry does have a little bit more major league experience and a little bit more of consistency at the major league level. So I think off the start, you got to give the edge to him a little bit. But with Brian Servant's start, that's a name to watch for sure for Blue Jays fans. I didn't really hear a lot about him at all before this season. So it's nice to see him showing out in spring training, and that's just something to watch. Now, I'm going to give it to you for the last one here, but I want to give an honorable mention out if you don't take the player I'm thinking of.
Okay, well, I'm going with Dalton Varsho. Dalton Varsho is was one of the biggest surprises for me this spring training. I think he looks really good. He's got that swing path down. The launch angle looks good. He's just a guy that looked like he really put in the effort. And I think that was really needed with him because there was a lot of question marks surrounding him. If he can't get his bat up, is the defensive side worth it? And right now, it's looking like through this first bit of spring training that he's looking fantastic. And maybe could really help this team out. Just getting on bases, getting those extra base hits. That'd be a huge component with Dalton Varsho that we need to see throughout this entirety of this year.
Yeah, I know it's been a small sample size, but it looks like Dalton Varsho has just been way more successful about getting the bat on the ball and just getting better contact. I know in that 3-for-3 game he had, he was smoking balls. I don't care if an everyday first baseman could have made that play. I don't care about that. He hammered that ball, barreled it up well. And yeah, he's being a lot better of a contact hitter for a guy that has been historically known to be a power bat. Not as much last year. It's nice to see him putting the ball in play more because then he has the ability to use his great base running skills, use that electric speed that he has. So if Dalton Varsho is striking out every third at bat, it's not going to be something that we're looking forward to. But you saw it last year with his bunting. Like he is a guy that can get on base in multiple different ways. So if he can put the ball in play more consistently, that's going to lead to a lot more success for him.
And the other thing about Dalton Varsho is I think you touched on it. The baseball awareness on the base path is a huge thing for him. You see him being able to really judge plays well, when to do this, when to do that. He looks really good. The problem is he wasn't getting on base last year. So this year, if he can get on base and you can use that speed, use that base running knowledge, I think that's going to be huge for the Blue Jays this season.
No, it absolutely will be. Dalton Varsho has always been a guy that's been in the 95 plus percentile in base running and speed. He's top 10% as well. I believe around 90th percentile as well. And you see it on the base paths. It's another thing for the pitcher to think about when you have a speedster like that on first or second base that you don't want them, especially on first base, don't want them getting the scoring position and being able to score on just a single. So Dalton Varsho, if you can he's such a good defender already. If you can use his offensive side a little bit more and he can start turning over the order for some of our big guns like George Springer, Bo Bichette, Vladdy, Justin Turner, it's going to look really good for the Blue Jays, especially if Kevin Kiermaier can also emulate the season he had last season. Then you have pretty much two, maybe even three number one hitters, leadoff hitters, and you just got multiple people that can turn over an order with speed.
Yeah, exactly. Was that the player you were going to bring up?
No, I liked what I saw from Kevin Kiermaier. It's nice that they got
Nice.
him and George Springer out of the stables a little bit, John Schneider there. But no, my guy was going to be Aurelvis Martinez. And it's just
Oh,
because of a similar swing to Dalton Varsho. The bat speed between those two are absolutely insane. Aurelvis Martinez has had close to 90 home runs over the last 3 years. And that's something that the Blue Jays fans should be screaming about for this team. We haven't seen the power in the last year. Aurelvis Martinez can be a guy, probably not at the start of the year, but down the stretch in the season that could come on this team, like kind of like a Davis Schneider role, like he was, and see immediate success for the Toronto Blue Jays and get more power hitting for a Blue Jays team that needs it badly.
yeah, and that was it was on my radar, sort of not one of my top stories, but I think it's a very interesting one to look at. And I think as this spring training moves forward and we get to see more and more of them, I think it's going to become a bigger, piece that all the fans can keep their eyes on.
Oh, 100%. It's a guy, one of the guys in this prospect system that can get Blue Jays fans excited, along with Ricky Tiedemann. Those are the two main guys that we're going to be watching this spring training as for prospects. And Aurelvis Martinez is only 22 years old, so he still does have a few years that he can develop. So that's a story to follow for Blue Jays fans, and hopefully we can see him launch some home runs into the stands for the rest of spring training here.
Yeah, I'm praying for it. I love seeing those guys because, and I think it's all stems from the Davis Schneider thing, right? Where he came in and sort of lit the world on fire. So if we can have another guy that can come in and get some production, it doesn't have to be near that kind of level, but give us some production that gives us fans, so much more hope for this prospect system. That's, obviously not one of the top prospect systems in the league. So when we have guys that can come out and perform, it really helps our case.
Well, especially with a team that's in win now mode, it would be nice for Aurelvis Martinez to kind of get Major League ready a little bit earlier than expected, just to help this team right now. Because we're going to get to a point where we're going to have to sign Vladimir Guerrero, Bo Bichette, so many players, and it's going to be like, do we have enough money to pay everyone? Which Rogers definitely does. It's just a question if are they willing to pay everyone, which has not been the case over the last few seasons. So just before we get into our last segment here, I wanted to give a shout out to our Locked On 24/7 streaming channel. Whether you guys want to watch at 3 a.m., 3 p.m., we always let you guys know about this because it's such a great opportunity. So just go to the Locked On Sports Today's page on YouTube and subscribe to our first ever 24/7 streaming channel.
So for this sort of, we're heading into the weekend. Me and Carter got plans. We got plans tonight. We're going out. That's the, sort of hurrah after a week of doing shows, and we want to get after it a little bit. So, but the other thing is we probably know that we're going to be sitting on the TV most of the afternoons watching some baseball. So, Carter, what's on tap for this weekend with the Blue Jays?
Yeah, we have a couple interesting pitching matchups. Chad Dallas is going tomorrow against the New York Yankees just to kind of hopefully continue his success he had in that first outing. The two that people are going to probably care a little bit more about are the Saturday and Sunday matchups. So on Saturday, it is expected that Chris Bassitt and Bowden Francis are both aiming for 3 innings against the Braves. So that will be an interesting situation. Hopefully, Ronald Acuna, Matt Olson, some of those bigger dogs are in the lineup so we can see some major league matchups. And then the Sunday is the Alek Manoah return. We'll have him at Boston. So hopefully going to go around 3 innings as well. And then Yusei Kikuchi is also scheduled to throw 45 to 50 pitches just against Blue Jays hitters in Dunedin. So it won't be during the spring training game. But those are some pitching matchups that they're already starting to ramp them up a little bit, obviously going from 2 innings to 3 innings. Out of those 3, I'm going to give Chris Bassitt, Bowden Francis, and Alek Manoah. Which one are you the most excited to watch this weekend?
It has to be the Alek Manoah start, just for an interest perspective of I want to see if he can rebound from the quite honestly horrible outing he had last time. But it's always fun to see Bassitt. Bowden Francis is going to be very interesting to watch again. The other little sort of cool piece is that it's going to be Garrit Cole today on Friday. So to see how the Blue Jays can match up against him is going to be very interesting as well. So this whole weekend is riddled with storylines for spring training.
Oh, yeah. It's the 2 big dogs going at it. Chad Dallas versus Garrit Cole, 2 of the best pitchers so far in spring training. So it's going to be a heavyweight matchup. No, hopefully Chad Dallas can continue his success, and Garrit Cole, I hope nothing but the worst for him in this spring training matchup. But one more thing I wanted to bring up, actually, was I kind of have these 3 pitchers in 3 categories. There's Chris Bassitt that he could throw a million balls and it wouldn't faze me whatsoever. Then we have Bowden Francis, who's kind of in the middle. It's like, I want to see him do good, but it's not really the end of the world if he doesn't. And then if we don't see success from Alek Manoah, there might be some panic going on in this apartment. We haven't seen anything good come out of him since like his 4th start last year. I think it was against the Royals. He went 6 innings. It hasn't been a lot of promise for Alek Manoah. So he's going to have to start at least putting out consistent outings. It doesn't have to be 3 scoreless innings, 9 strikeouts. But the thing I want to see this weekend is I don't want to see him hit anyone or walk max 1 person.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? And I know a lot of the fans say, including some of our friends say that like, well, this guy had a bad outing this game and he hasn't been good for a couple of starts. And my only sort of opposition to that is exactly what you said. It's been a long time since we've seen Alek Manoah be good. That's the difference here. And I think that's what people aren't understanding that because they're still trying to back him. And I'm like, whoa. Let's not back this guy too hard, because if he continues to play like this, there's going to have to be change. There has to be. So that's a huge storyline. And I think you're 100% on the nose with the fact that it's 3 completely different levels of pitchers we're about to see this weekend. And it's going to be electric.
Yeah, you can kind of jump on whichever bandwagon you want. If you don't want to stress it out with Alek Manoah, then you can just watch the Chris Bassitt start and just kind of watch him throw 89, but be effective. Alek Manoah, I did say that he was going to have a bounce back season. I'm still on that frame because I don't want to switch up this early. It's only been 1 spring training start. So I'm still with the Alek Manoah bounce back, but we do need to see something out of him. But to just give me some hope with my take and hopefully don't be exposed by the internet.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong. I would love for Alek Manoah to come back and be just the biggest beast of them all, but it's starting to hit me. The realistic reality of the situation is starting to hit me, and it's sad because I really want him to do well. And then at the end of the day, that's what upsets me the most. I think is that I want Alek Manoah to be so good, and he just hasn't been. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting weekend. Yeah, pick a pitching matchup because I should have. You know what I should do is I should just pick one of them, watch that one, so I don't have to sit there by the TV and pull my hair out watching Alek Manoah. But I pray to God, I'm moving the panic button slowly and slowly closer to me. I just don't want to hit it yet. You know what I mean?
Yeah, we can't. I don't think we can give up on any Blue Jays players this early on in spring training. Whether that is to jump on board the bandwagon of Kikuchi and Barrios because they looked unbelievable, or kind of go the other side and look at Alek Manoah and for me, Eduardo Escobar, who have just both looked terrible. Eduardo Escobar looks like he hasn't played baseball in like 5 years. His at bats are so unserious for me. I need to see a little. I think it's almost more for him for a bounce back. Because like
Yeah.
Alek Manoah is going to make this team no matter what, whether he is good or bad. I feel like with Eduardo Escobar, if he doesn't figure out his stuff, it's like, get out of here, man. You're on a minor league contract for a reason. We don't need to see you in the regular season. So for him, if he wants to make this team, he's going to have to find some success.
I got one last question for you. Okay, regarding that panic button that I just brought up. Where is the panic button? Are you not concerned about it at all? That's not even in the room. You're not seeing it, blah, blah, blah. It's across the room. You know where it is. You're not really looking for it, but you see it maybe. Is it on the desk beside you, or do you got your finger on the trigger? Where are you at with that panic button for Alek Manoah?
Okay, so for me with Alek Manoah, I wasn't panicking at all. But I think with that last spring training performance, I'm starting to see the panic button like peek through the door a little bit. He's not
Okay.
necessarily entering the room, but I am aware of his presence and I want him to stay as far away as possible.
Yeah, that's I see. I'm more of a I know where it is in the room. Maybe it's on the desk beside me, but I'm not quite reaching for it. I'm just getting worried. Like I'm out of the corner of my eye. It's like giving me the old wave to come over.
We can't like hang on him too much because the guy that probably hasn't like faced a lot of live at bats in a long time has obviously been working on his own stuff, but
Yep.
probably not to the skill level yet of these MLB or just minor league hitters in general. I
Yeah.
just want to
I'm
say,
I'm praying that I can pick that thing up and throw it out the window in a couple days, but we'll have to see.
yeah, hopefully we can just come back to this episode and kind of laugh at ourselves for downing Alek Manoah for this upcoming season. I
I
just want to
pray.
say thank you guys for watching. Before we head out, I always want to give one more shout out to our Locked On 24/7 streaming channel. You guys already know where to go. Whatever you guys want to watch, if you want to digest some sports content, we have a ton of good experts over there that can help you with your sports needs, and just great for letting you guys know on news and stories that's going on with every league. So just go to our Locked On Sports Today national 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube and subscribe.
We will see you guys next week. Have a great weekend. Try not to get too banged up over the weekend. We'll try not to as well, so we can come up with a good episode on Monday. But we'll see where the weekend takes us, I guess. Hey, Carter?
Yeah, I mean, I worst case scenario, I feel horrible tomorrow, and I just got to sit back, relax, and watch Chris Bassitt shove on the mound.
Yeah, at least for a Saturday, it's an easy day, and we can just relax and not have to worry. It's not like you're waking up a little hungover, and then and then you have to pray to God that Alek Manoah has a great start.
Yeah, at least it'll be a little bit more casual. Maybe we could pop another casual beer tomorrow, depending on how we're feeling.
There we go. You're already thinking ahead. I love it. Talk to you guys next week.